Autumn is a time to wind down after the summer rush. One chapter of life closes, and another begins. But autumn also brings endless rainy days, chilly evenings, the smell of smoke, and whispers of ghosts. Here are 3 scary stories to keep you company during those long, lonely nights ahead. Thank you for watching Craving Fear. We need your support to continue delivering stories and improve. If you haven't yet, like this video and subscribe for more content. Some people find autumn comforting. They enjoy the crisp air and like watching the leaves turning orange and brown. I used to like autumn too, until one day I didn't, because autumn is the time when I was murdered. It happened on this road. It was a lonely, deserted path through the woods. The trees were bare and their twisted branches looked like skeletons reaching out. I was taking a long walk. I used to do that. Not anymore. As I walked, I felt a strange chill run down my spine. I shrugged it off and kept going, listening to the sound of my feet squishing on the wet ground. But then, I heard something else. Footsteps. They were faint, just behind me. I stopped and turned around. No one was there. My heart skipped a beat, but I told myself it was nothing. Maybe it's just the echo of my own steps. I kept walking, but the feeling of being watched wouldn't go away. The footsteps came again, closer this time. Still, no one. I was scared now, really scared. The road ahead seemed longer and darker, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Then, I saw him. A man, or at least a shape that looked like one, was standing far behind me. He was dressed in dark clothing with a hood covering his face. He didn't move, just stood there, staring. Or at least, I thought he was staring. I couldn't see his eyes. My heart pounded in my chest like a drum. I turned around and started walking faster. The footsteps followed. Faster. Louder. My stomach twisted in knots as I felt the man getting closer and closer. I couldn't take it anymore. I turned around and shouted, "What do you want?" But he didn't answer. He just kept coming. His steps were slow and steady, like he had all the time. I could feel panic rising in my throat. I started to run, but the road felt endless, the trees closing in around me like a cage. I turned my head back and he was right there, just a few steps behind me. I could see the outline of his face now, but it was still hidden in shadow. I could hear his breathing, slow, deep, almost inhuman. Then I felt it, a sharp, searing pain in my back. I stumbled, gasping for breath, trying to stay on my feet. I couldn't believe it. He had stabbed me. My legs felt weak, but I kept moving, trying to get away. But the pain was too much. Every step was agony, like my insides were being torn apart. I looked down and saw blood spreading across my chest. I fell to the ground, my body too heavy to move. I lay there, the rain mixing with my blood, soaking into the dirt beneath me. I could feel my life slipping away, every breath more painful than the last. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The man was above me now, leaning over like a vulture ready to feast. His hand reached into my pocket, taking my wallet and my phone. He didn't care that I was dying. He didn't care about anything. As the world around me faded to black, I felt my soul leaving my body. My lifeless body lay in a pool of blood, eyes wide open, staring at nothing. The rain kept falling, the night growing darker, and I knew I was gone. But why did this happen to me? I was just an ordinary guy, or at least, that's what I thought. But maybe I wasn't as innocent as I believed. A few weeks before, I had found something in the woods, a strange old book buried under the leaves. It was covered in strange symbols, and I thought it was just some forgotten piece of history. I took it home, curious about its secrets. But from that moment on, strange things started happening. I had nightmares, felt like I was being watched, and heard whispers in the night. I should have known better. I should have left the book where it was. I didn't realize it then, but the book was cursed, and by taking it, I had sealed my fate. The man who killed me wasn't just a random stranger. He was a shadow, a guardian of the book, sent to take back what I had stolen. It was a crisp autumn day, and I set out into the forest for a hunt. The trees were bare, the ground was covered in dead leaves, and the air smelled of smoke. My boots slipped on the wet ground as I moved through the familiar woods, my gun in hand. But something felt different that day, a heaviness in the air that made me uneasy. As I walked, I heard a rustling sound behind me. I turned around quickly and saw a massive stag standing in a clearing. Its antlers twisted like the branches around us, but it was its eyes that froze me, dark and intense, staring straight into mine. I tried to aim my gun, but my hands were shaking. The stag didn't move. It just kept staring, its gaze piercing through me. Suddenly the stag began to walk toward me. Fear gripped me as I saw the impossible happen. It reared up on its back legs and began walking like a man. Its eyes turned red, glowing in the dim light. A deep, harsh voice echoed through the trees, sending chills down my spine. "I am the ruler of this land," it growled. "You are not welcomed here." I dropped my gun in terror, unable to move. The fear was overwhelming and I fainted, collapsing onto the cold, wet ground. When I woke up, I was lying on the forest floor, soaked and shivering. My gun was beside me, and I tried to convince myself it had all been a nightmare. But then I saw them, deep hoofprints in the ground, leading away into the forest. It had been real. As I hurried to leave, I remembered an old legend the hunters used to tell. They spoke of a cursed stag, a guardian of the forest, who appeared only to those who had wronged the land. I realized with a sinking heart that I had been guilty of taking more than I needed, hunting beyond what was necessary. The forest had marked me, and the stag had come to deliver its warning. I wasn't welcome here anymore. With that thought, I fled the forest, haunted by the memory of the stag's glowing eyes and terrible voice. I will never forget that day, the day I learned the forest had eyes and they were watching. I used to be proud of my pumpkin farm. Our small town was known for its pumpkin harvest, and every year people from all over would come to see the giant orange pumpkins we grew. My fields were always full of life, with bright, healthy pumpkins growing under the autumn sun. But that all changed last year. It started when I noticed something strange. The pumpkins looked fine on the outside, big, round and orange, but when I cut one open, the inside was rotten. The flesh was black and mushy, and the smell, oh, the smell was horrible. It was like a rotting corpse, a stench so strong it made my stomach turn. I couldn't believe it. How could something so beautiful on the outside be so foul on the inside? I didn't know what to do. I tried everything, fertilizers, new seeds, different watering schedules, but nothing worked. Every time I checked my crop, more and more pumpkins were rotting from the inside out. It was like the fields were cursed. The stress of it was unbearable. My whole livelihood depended on those pumpkins, and now they were worthless. One day, after weeks of struggling with my failing crop, I decided to check a new batch of pumpkins. I walked through the field, feeling the cold autumn wind against my face, hoping that maybe, just maybe, these would be different. I picked up a big, beautiful pumpkin, praying it was healthy. But when I sliced into it, a thick, dark substance oozed out. It was slimy, like blood, and it smelled even worse than before. I dropped the knife and stumbled back, my heart pounding in my chest. What was happening to my farm? The sight of that dark slime haunted me. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I spent hours wandering the fields, looking for some sign, some clue to explain what was going wrong. But the more I searched, the more hopeless I felt. My farm was dying, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. One evening, as the sun was setting and the shadows were growing long, I decided to head home. The air was cold, and the smell of decay hung heavy in the air. As I walked along the path, lost in my thoughts, I saw her, a frail old woman standing by the side of the road. She was hunched over, with deep wrinkles lining her face and eyes that seemed to look right through me. "You're the farmer, aren't you?" she asked, her voice raspy and low. "The one with the rotten pumpkins." I nodded, too tired and scared to say anything. "Your land is cursed," she said, her words sending a chill down my spine. "It's been cursed for a long time, ever since the war. Do you know what happened here during the war?" I shook my head, feeling a sense of dread creeping over me. "During World War II, there was a Nazi concentration camp on this land," she continued. "People were tortured, killed, and burned here. Their bodies were buried in the fields, and the ground soaked up their pain, their suffering. The land is tainted by their blood, and it will never allow life to grow on it again." I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. The thought of my farm being built on the site of such horror made me feel sick to my stomach. What can I do?" I stammered. The old woman looked at me with pity in her eyes. "You can't do anything," she said softly. "The land is beyond saving. You need to leave, sell the farm, and never come back. If you stay, the curse will destroy you and your family." Her words echoed in my mind as I walked home that night. The wind howled through the trees, and the smell of smoke was thicker than ever. I could almost hear the cries of the lost souls buried beneath my fields, calling out for justice. I knew then that I had no choice. The land was cursed, and there was nothing I could do to save it. The next day, I sold the farm. It was the hardest decision I ever had to make, but I couldn't stay there any longer. I packed up my family, and we left town, leaving the cursed land behind us. But even now, miles away from that farm, I can't escape the memories. The smell of rotten pumpkins, the sight of that dark, oozing slime, and the knowledge that I had lived in a graveyard of lost souls. I still think about the old woman's warning, and I wonder if the curse will ever be lifted. But one thing is for sure. I'll never set foot on that land again, and I'll never forget the horrors that grew in my fields, hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be discovered. Hope you like these stories. Which one do you like the most? Tell us in the comments below. If you have interesting stories, send them in an email at the address listed in the video description. We'd love to hear them, and I'll make it into a video. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.